Hello and welcome back to the True Crime Guys podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Michael.
Well, welcome to 2022, everybody.
Hope
you had a great holiday season and you're ready for some creeping in the new year. Hopefully it's better than the last 2 years.
Right. Well, if not, then we'll keep you entertained throughout it, right?
And that's right. We're always here for you.
That's right. We're here for that little distraction.
That's right. And this week we've got a hell of a case that's got so much to it. It's just like it's like an iceberg.
My mind is still twisting around from this case, Lauren. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, man. I don't know if we've ever covered a case quite like this that has so many elements to it. So much has changed. You know less now than you knew when the murder happened, which was almost 30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
1993. And it's still ongoing. There's still like hearings going on. There was in December of 2021. So, and there's going to be more coming up, I'm sure. But
and that's something
possible
we need to
corruption.
stress.
There's possible corruption on the part of the police. There's a possible wrongful conviction. There's a crazy prison break that's involved in this story. A serial killer. Like it's all
crazy.
Over the place. Yep.
And also, it's unsolved. So just a warning. I know some of you don't like unsolved cases. This case is technically still unsolved, right?
Yeah, technically it's solved. Technically, two men went to prison. One of them served a full sentence for the murder.
Well, yeah, I guess we'll get into it.
Like I said, on the books it's solved, but it's a lot of people are not happy and say that it wasn't. So
yeah, including myself. But we'll talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Hey, could have been me. Some say we were having an affair. Hey, could have been me, but tell me how when I wasn't there. Hey, could have been me, but I'm her husband. I love her, I swear. Up and down and wonder, kinda makes you wonder. All these people, all the reasons, facts changing with the seasons. Hey, could have been me. I'll admit to anything to be free. Hey, could have been me, but don't mind the insurance policy. Hey, it could have been me. When it comes to justice, I pull the strings. I pull the string. Up and down and wonder, kinda makes you wonder. All these people, all the reasons, facts changing with the seasons. Up and down and wonder, kinda makes you wonder. All these people, all the reasons, facts changing with the seasons.
All right, our case this week, we are going to Buffalo, New York, to Niagara County.
New York.
In the early 90s. Yep.
Good old New York. Almost Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, we right up there.
And I've titled this case "Who Killed Deborah Meindl?" That's at least the name of the crime line. I'm not sure what kind of fun name you'll have for the episode, but
I don't know. I might use that.
Yeah,
it's not bad.
It's an aptly named because ultimately I don't think too many people are happy with the way that this thing was closed out. The two men that went to prison, it's not a whole lot on them proving their guilt. It's kind of crazy that they got a conviction with as little as they had.
No doubt.
There's
some fishy stuff going on. There's some people with connections, seems like some law enforcement collaboration with criminals and whatnot. There's a lot of fishy stuff going on in this case.
Yeah, it's one you're going to have to pay close attention to. You can't halfway listen to this episode because there's going to be a lot of names and a lot of like twists and turns to this thing.
Right. I'll try not to take us on too many tangents.
There you go.
Because this case is entertaining in itself. It really is.
Yeah. So yeah, like I mentioned, we're going to Niagara County, Buffalo, New York. North Tonawanda, to be specific, it's a city.
So fun to say.
Yeah, North Tonawanda. It's a city in Niagara County, New York, and is part of the Buffalo Niagara Falls metropolitan area. The city is named after Tonawanda Creek, which is at its south border, so it has this creek running through the town. It's a small city that's population has seemed to stay right in the 30,000 range. I looked up Population in 1990 was actually bigger than it is now. It was like mid 30s, and now it's like the low 30s. So smaller town, but part of a bigger metropolitan area, obviously. It's just north of Buffalo city limits. The Tonawanda neighborhood, where the Meindls, which is the focus of this episode, we mentioned, the name Deborah Meindl. The neighborhood in which her and her family lived in Tonawanda was a collection of modest homes, a quiet enclave just off the Niagara River. And in 1993, the Meindls, which consisted of Deborah, her husband Donald, and their two daughters, Jessica, who was 10, and Lisa, who was 7, all lived in a small house in Tonawanda Creek. This house was on 84 Franklin Street. It had 2 entrances, one on a narrow front porch and the other at the back of the house.
Right.
This is all important details because this is where a murder would take place. I want to quickly mention the main study source for this case while I'm thinking about it. There's a fantastic New York Times article that's one of those articles that's it's almost like a short book. It's so detailed. And the article is called "A Murder, Gold Bars, a Jailbreak, and Questions About Justice." Highly recommend, if you're interested in this case, checking out that article. It will be linked in our episode description as well, of course, as usual. So yeah, that was our main study source, as well as, how I do it. I go down the rabbit hole and start looking up old articles from the early 90s when this case was fresh to get, other details to mix in. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just pulling up a Google Maps of 84 Franklin Street, Tonawanda. It's just a small little house, like a little, what here in the South we'd call a mill village house. That's what it looks like to me.
It sounds like it was, not the biggest properties, very close neighbors, things like that around. So.
Yeah, it just looks like a historic downtown now.
Okay.
Right.
So yeah, Deborah Meindl was working towards becoming a nurse at the time. She was a part-time intern at the Sisters Hospital and went to Niagara County Community College for most of her classes. Her husband Donald worked at a Taco Bell inside of the Walden Galleria Mall.
Yeah, I believe he was the manager, wasn't he?
Yeah. But not for long.
Right.
And so, go ahead.
I was just going to say he has a terrible day on the day of his wife's murder
No
before
doubt.
even discovering that his wife was murdered.
And that day would be February 17th, 1993, when Deborah Meindl and the girls had left for school that morning like usual. I believe it was a Wednesday morning. And Mr. Meindl went to his job at Taco Bell. Shortly before noon, however, a neighbor in that neighborhood on Franklin Street spotted a young man walking down the family's driveway. They also saw him, this person, open the gate and turn toward the house. Also, allegedly, a postal worker heard some noises inside the home when she delivered the mail, and also found it odd that the dog, Taffy, that they had usually, barked whenever she would deliver the mail.
Right.
No barking from Taffy. So some strange reportings from the neighborhood that day. Meanwhile, sometime between 2:15 and 2:30 p.m., Deborah arrived home alone. She'd gotten done with class early, and then just after 3 p.m., Jessica, the oldest daughter, came home from school, and this is where she would find a gruesome scene. She would find her mother bound and murdered. She'd been stabbed and strangled. Not the scene that you want your 10-year-old daughter to find. Her backpack would be dropped and left right there at the scene. Meanwhile, Donald Meindl, the husband that worked at Taco Bell, thought he was having a bad day already on this day of February 17th. Sitting in the Walden Galleria food court, he learned from a Taco Bell district representative that he had been fired from his job as the manager of the Taco Bell in the mall. And the reasoning behind the firing was sexual harassment. He had some reports from coworkers, and he was actually dating, we would come to find out, one of the 17-year-old employees.
Yes.
And I think he was 30, 34, 30, something like in his early to mid 30s.
Yeah.
Kind of creepy.
This is so sus.
Yeah.
Right. That's just such
There's a
weird
lot
behavior.
of sus. For being honest, there's a lot of stuff you can find about Donald Meindl if you really look. There's some allegations about him with an even younger child at one point. Yeah.
Well,
So,
I mean,
now
everyone in this case.
Yes.
It's like every person you look at, you're like, oh, he did it.
Yeah. It would be reported later that the Meindls had an open relationship, that Deborah was okay with him, dating other women or whatever.
Yeah, but what about affairs with minors?
Yeah, I'm not so sure if she knew about that, and was cool. I doubt she'd be cool with that.
Yeah, me too.
It's pretty creepy, considering especially that they have 2 daughters, one of them that's a teen. It's just kind of gross.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that. Wow. Yeah, good point. He's literally dating someone just a little older than his daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, so Donald just found out that he got fired from his job. He's sitting in the food court, and then half an hour later, as he unwound at the Pizzeria Uno's in the mall, contemplating what he's going to do now for work, a former coworker rushed in to tell him that there was an emergency at his house. He was told that one of his daughters had discovered her mother, his wife, Deborah, handcuffed, stabbed, and strangled with a necktie.
Ooh.
Now, I don't know if this coworker knew all those details yet, but probably told him, "Hey, something's happened to your wife," something along those lines.
Right. I mean, they could have. I mean, that was all. Maybe. That's all information you would know from this initial scene. So,
yeah. So, meanwhile, on the scene, Detective David Bentley, who was a veteran officer with a reputation for closing cases, responded to the call on Franklin Street, and upon arrival carried a video camera and recorded as he and a technician cataloged the evidence. It was as Mr. Bentley said in a recent interview, quote, "one of the least likely houses you would think someone from Buffalo would burglarize."
I agree. Like I said, that's why I wanted to look it up on Google Maps, because I saw this quote as well. And back in the day, now it looks like it's been redone with siding and different paint and whatnot. But back in the day, it was almost like a wood siding cabin looking little house up there. It definitely, it just looked like a middle class American. It didn't look like a house that you would rob in hopes of a big score. It really did not.
No.
Well,
and it's very, knowing what we know at this point, it's very unlikely that this was a robbery gone bad. This was more an intentional hit on this woman,
right,
for one reason or another. There's multiple motives depending on the perpetrator you believe did it,
absolutely,
which could be one of many people that we'll go through in this. This is one of those true whodunits.
You need to remember, you need to remember everyone in this case. So take a minute right now and remember Detective David Bentley. Remember that name as well,
and also the husband, Donald.
Yes, Donald Meindl.
That's 2 potential suspects.
That's
so
right.
far.
Hold on to them, guys. Keep them in your mind.
There's more coming, though. Don't worry. Yeah. So Detective Bentley was recording the scene, and it was February 17th, 1993 at 3:43 p.m., which was time stamped on the video of him walking around the crime scene. He went inside the house and calmly detailed what he saw. Quote, "This is the front door. This is the blanket that daughter Jessica found covering the door, partially blocking her entrance when she came in the front door today." That's creepy.
Yeah, it is.
Like you get home from school and there's a blanket hanging in front of the front door.
Yeah. It's like, we never do this.
Obviously.
What the hell is this?
Yeah, that would definitely give me pause. He then directed the camera toward a brown and yellow stitch blanket. Jessica's purple backpack still lay on the floor and was visible on Mr. Bentley's recording of the scene. She had walked in, found what she found, and dropped her backpack.
Naturally, in shock.
Yeah. The camera then captured the gruesome scene. Quote, "The living room, that's the dining room, and the victim, obviously. The blood spatter is all here on the floor. Some things were knocked out of the china cabinet. There's a ring on the victim's hand, a trail of blood running this way into the dining room." And then the fact that the ring was still on the victim's hand, among other things, to me, screams not a burglary necessarily.
Not a robbery.
Why wouldn't you take a wedding ring off the victim's hand if you're just trying to get a score? That's probably one of the more valuable things in that home.
Oh yeah, no doubt. It would not have been missed.
A 5-inch steak knife with blood on the handle and blade was jammed into a kitchen drawer. Blood was also left on a dog toy, a recipe book, and a gravy boat. So blood all over the place.
Yep.
Chairs were overturned, drawers were rifled through, and on the floor lie lifeless Miss Meindl, repeatedly stabbed, her hands cuffed behind her back, and strangled by her husband's necktie still looped around her neck. So very violent murder that occurred here. Very personal.
That's what I was going to say. Either very
the
personal,
multiple means of killing her. Like if you're just you're in the home and then the wife comes home and you have to get rid of the witness. It just doesn't seem like that would be the means of killing her. You'd either stab her or you would strangle her, but both just seems like you're getting off on it,
Yes, exactly. This seems like the work of a serial killer or a very passionate killing. Someone trying to prove a point. Someone who's close to the victim.
Yep. So the detective and the technician emerged from the house at around 4 p.m. They studied footprints in the snow leading to the back of the house and discovered a small rectangular cut in the screened rear window about 6 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Investigators would later determine that hole had been cut from the inside.
And there's the weird part,
So-
right? It's like,
Yeah.
wait a second. Okay, so this is
Is
point of
someone
entry.
trying to make this look like they broke in when they really were able to gain access without breaking and entering?
That is so sus.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I learned it was cut from the inside, it's like, okay, well, there goes the point of entry. This is strange.
Detective Bentley surmised that, quote, it had to be someone strong to do what they did. And later in his police report that night, he wrote that the crime was probably too violent for it to be a burglary gone wrong. Quote, we all feel very violated. Debbie was a wonderful woman, a neighbor said. I really would like to see the jerk that did this go down hard because I can't fathom those little girls without what those little girls will do without their mother.
Right.
She was their rock. Dad was out of town on business quite a lot, and Mommy was the one who held the family together. These are all quotes from neighbors,
Right.
who witnessed, you know what a good mom she was and
Right. And like
friendly.
And like we said, Donald was a manager at Taco Bell, so I'm sure he had to go for, meetings and whatnot, conferences.
district conferences and things like that.
Exactly.
Detective Bentley and his team of officers quickly focused their investigation on Donald Meindl, who was then 33 and a manager at the Taco Bell at the local mall, who we talked about. He had a friend who worked at a Sicilian Delight, a pizza shop in the food court near the Taco Bell. And unhappy in his marriage, Donald had allegedly confided in his friend, discussing the idea of hiring someone to kill his wife, according to police.
Uh-oh, that don't look good.
So now some sus stuff starts coming out about Donald, the husband.
Yep.
Quote, it should be made to look like a robbery, a friend recalled, according to a police report. So this is all sounding exactly like what he was talking to, his friend at the mall about.
Right. How do you joke about this?
Right?
Like,
Exactly. That's not a joking matter.
Made to
I don't
be
know.
look like a
I'm willing to
robbery?
joke about most stuff, but
yeah.
yeah. Donald insisted that he was joking and denied any plot to kill his wife. The Meindls, as we briefly mentioned earlier, had an open marriage, and Donald was seeing a 17-year-old girl who worked with him at Taco Bell, a girl that was, below him in the chain, which also has issues. He's her superior.
Yeah, quite a
at the
few
workplace,
quite a few conflicts of interest there.
and almost exactly twice her age as well.
Oh wow, yeah. Yeah.
And she's a minor, depending on what state you're in, I guess, as far as consent goes and things like that, if they're actually having sex. He allegedly kept photos of her scantily clad in his wallet. Basically, once again, depending on where you live, that's like basically child porn if she's underage, according to that state's laws.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure New York would probably be pretty strict on that type of thing.
Yeah, but we're talking 90s. I don't know what
That's
the
true. Early 90s. Talking 93.
minor consent laws were in the 90s in New York, but I'm sure someone will let us know. But either way, we can all agree it's fucking creepy.
No doubt. It's creepy either way, whether illegal or not.
Yeah. And in the initial report written during the initial investigation, Detective Bentley noted handcuffs and other items found in the home that were used for, quote, sexual bondage.
Okay.
And Donald Meindl also had a $50,000 life insurance policy on his wife. There's a lot of things that are pointing in the direction of the husband.
But that could have came through his work. 50,000. That's not like kill somebody money. I feel like if you're gonna kill somebody for the insurance money, you're gonna take out what, like $500,000, $1 million, 50,000. That probably
we have
came
to
through his.
We have to consider inflation. 30 years ago, $50K went a long way. But
I guess, but to killing your wife, though?
and they were not a wealthy couple. I mean, he's working at Taco Bell. He's a manager, and she was going through nursing school, so they weren't bringing in a lot of money. $50K is a lot, but
yeah,
that's not necessarily like a damning thing. A lot of couples have like a basic life insurance policy. If he had just taken it out a week before she was murdered, then I'd be like, okay. We see that all the time. As soon as the policy gets put in place, it's like all of a sudden,
yeah, exactly.
my wife's dead.
Yeah, that's sus. But I'm guessing that this was probably through his work. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's very possible.
But it's still something worth.
I have a
mentioning.
large life insurance policy on me through my work that my wife has nothing to do with.
Yeah, well, there you go. So. And see, most of the time they'll let you throw your spouse on there, for about the same price. So yeah, I could see that, especially at his level of management.
Yeah. So Donald maintained his innocence and had an alibi, which was legit. On the day of the killing, he was at the Taco Bell getting fired after being accused of sexually harassing his staff. So
wow,
he was definitely at the mall during the time that his wife was murdered. That doesn't mean that he couldn't have played a role in her murder and hired someone to do it,
right?
Which was kind of what he had been talking to his coworkers about doing. He wasn't so much talking about killing her himself, but having her killed. So
exactly. Yeah, he's preoccupied with people at work apparently.
Yeah.
I wonder about this sexual harassment charge. Like, was it this 17-year-old that finally got tired of his shit and came forward, or was he?
Yeah.
You know.
Or was there someone else?
Yeah.
Another young girl.
Was he
that
coming
worked with
on
him?
to other young girls that worked there as well? I'm sure he had a revolving door of young people, like most fast food places are. I mean, the turnaround rate is ridiculous. So yeah, the amount of people that come through those doors, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, so the police are zeroing in on Donald at that time, but then days after the murder, they get a new lead. A confidential informant, a woman named Nancy Hummingbird, who was a friend of James Pugh, who was, like a small-time criminal. They get used to that name as well, James Pugh.
James Pugh, yep.
James Pugh also had a passing acquaintance with a man named Brian Lorenz.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian Lorenz and James Pugh were crooks, they were thieves. And this Nancy Hummingbird comes forward and says that Brian Lorenz, who had since left the Buffalo area, was the killer of Deborah Meindl. She said that hours after Deborah Meindl was killed in her city of Tonawanda, in her home, James Pugh was very nervous, and his friend Brian Lorenz boasted of killing as the ultimate rush.
Right.
So now you have these two new suspects that emerge. This informant that comes forward and saying that they were bragging basically that. Brian Lorenz was bragging about killing Deborah Meindl.
Well, he was bragging about killing, being the ultimate rush. I don't think there was anything that really tied these two men to Deborah Meindl other than the timing. Am I wrong?
Well, no, because Lorenz said he said that he actually went into detail and said that Deborah Meindl wouldn't go down, quote, as he strangled and stabbed her repeatedly with a kitchen knife. She later testified. So Nancy Hummingbird is saying directly that he said that. She also said that. She saw him wearing a .357 caliber handgun in a leather holster and was, quote, hyped up and excited when he came back to her flat wearing a blood-stained sweatshirt.
Ah, okay.
Quite the testimony here.
Yeah. But
Nancy Hummingbird.
But there were no gunshots in the apartment, right?
No, yeah.
Okay.
There was a knife used and a tie used to strangle her, but
right.
yeah, no gun.
Okay.
So the police would search for Brian Lorenz and find him in Sioux City, Iowa, where he was jailed for stealing a car. He was actually in jail in Iowa. And, quote, this is the headlines that emerged at that point, quote, a 5-month investigation into February's slaying of a mother of two in her city of Tonawanda home ended Tuesday with the indictment of two Buffalo men, Brian Lorenz, who was 23, and James Pugh, who was 31, were charged with the murder, burglary, and menacing charges in the slaying of Deborah Meindl. So they go ahead and arrest these two and indict them for murder.
On one testimony?
The murder of Deborah Meindl. On basically Nancy Hummingbird's testimony.
Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, it's like some West Memphis 3 shit right here. We're just moving right ahead with some witnesses. Okay.
Yeah. So they had sat down with Brian Lorenz while he was in Iowa, where he confesses to strangling Miss Meindl.
Okay.
He says he strangled her in her home after she discovered them burglarizing it when she returned early from class. And in this confession, he also implicated his buddy James Pugh, his sometime burglary partner, who vehemently denied having anything to do with this murder. So he's denying. Meanwhile, Brian Lorenz is pointing the finger at him, saying, "Yeah, me and Pugh, we did this murder."
That's odd.
However, the confession, much like the West Memphis 3 that you brought up, had some details wrong. And was actually deemed inadmissible in trial amid concerns that Brian Lorenz's right to counsel may not have been waived properly. So they couldn't even use the confession from Brian Lorenz. So all they have to go on is this Nancy Hummingbird, story about them claiming to have killed her.
Now
they have no physical evidence, no signs of forced. They have nothing on them physically at the scene tying them to this murder. All they have is this Nancy Hummingbird thing.
Right. Well, and Lorenz's alleged confession. I mean,
but they couldn't use that in court though, so the jury couldn't even hear that.
Right. Now, how was this? Do you know how this confession was taken? Like, he was already in custody, right? So you don't know really.
He was in Iowa when they came to see him,
right?
And later we find out his story later on, and his attorney's story is that one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But in a way, it's believable if you're a dumb criminal. But he wanted to be back in New York. He was in jail in Iowa. And so he supposedly confessed to the murder so that he would be extradited to New York, where I'm assuming he thought that they wouldn't have enough evidence to convict him for the murder. So he would get a free trip back to New York.
Oh.
And then, nothing would come of the murder charge because they didn't have any physical evidence. And then he would just deny it when he got there. But
okay. That's not crazy. That's not crazy,
I know,
especially
right?
for a lifetime criminal who, is expecting to possibly live his whole life in prison. So he's like, well, at least I'll be
It
in
reminds
New
you
York.
a bit of Damien Eccles taunting the police early on, thinking there's no way they could convict me. They don't have any evidence.
Right. Yeah. Like, this
Psych,
is crazy.
you know,
I'll just,
joke's on you.
yeah,
You
exactly.
get convicted.
Exactly. I'll get a little fresh air. I'll get to be in court, talk to some people, get a little interaction with the real world, and
To
then
mess with these stiffs a little bit.
right, and then I won't get convicted, and then I'll go back.
Yeah. Yeah. Next thing you know, you're on death row for 18 years. Yeah.
Right. Oh my God.
So yeah, they go to trial for the murder of Deborah Meindl with these two, Lorenz and Pugh, and the prosecutor says, "quote This is not a case, ladies and gentlemen, involving a lot of forensic evidence. We do not have any fingerprints to put them there. We do not have his blood or something to put him there. We don't have his wallet at the scene. We don't have any. We don't even have a witness to come in and tell you I saw him there." This is the prosecutor's case.
This is a terrible start. We need to work on your opening arguments, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not
So
good.
the case would hinge on a series of witnesses who testified that they heard the men talking about the crime, and the jury took less than 6 hours to return a guilty verdict.
That is
Both men were
insane.
sent to prison. Yep.
That's less than 6 hours. Like,
Yep.
how do you do that with a clean conscience at being on that jury, Lauren? How do you?
I know. How can you say with beyond a reasonable doubt, for sure, like without a speck of evidence, putting them at the crime scene?
Right. And I'm like, there's blood all over the place. And as we later find out, there was DNA taken from the crime scene.
Yeah.
Okay. And like, these dudes didn't match it.
Yep.
I just don't see. I don't know. You can't give them murder for this.
It's crazy.
It really
I
is.
mean, unless there's some stuff we don't know, but I've read a lot of stuff about this case and haven't seen what you could really convict him on evidence-wise, aside from the Nancy Hummingbird story. But we would come to find out later that she was quite a storyteller.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, this gets really interesting, guys. It gets more confusing. Hang in there.
Yeah. So before being sent to prison, James Pugh made one last plea of innocence to the judge. Quote, "What do I have to say from the beginning to prove that I could not have done this crime? I am not the murderer. I was never there." But questions about whether the two were guilty continued, especially after the testimony of several witnesses at the trial that were later called into question. We'll talk about that more in a bit. Cut to 2015, 22 years after Deborah's murder. This case is going to get more convoluted and crazy, but we have a crazy tale of an amazing prison break,
Right.
a serial killer, and all of that. So we're going to cut to 2015 and go into that in a minute. But first, let's get a quick ad break.
All right, let's do it.
What's up, creepers? Let me tell you about our latest sponsor, Bombas. Bombas' mission is simple. Make the most comfortable clothes ever and match every item sold with an equal item donated. So when you buy your Bombas, you are also giving to someone in need. Bombas design their socks, shirts, and underwear to be the clothes you can't wait to put on every day. Everything they make is soft, seamless, tagless, and has a luxury, cozy feel. They're made from super soft materials like merino wool, Pima cotton, and even cashmere, which makes them the perfect cozy winter layers. There's a pair of Bombas socks for everything you do. They come in tons of options like comfy performance styles for every sport and activity that keeps you moving. Bombas t-shirts are made with thoughtful design features like invisible seams, soft fabrics, and the perfect weight so they hang just right, while their underwear have a barely there feel with second skin support that might make you forget they're even there, in a good way. And did you know that socks, underwear, and t-shirts are the 3 most requested clothing items at homeless shelters? That's why Bombas donates one for every item you buy. So far, Bombas customers like you have helped donate over 50 million items of essential clothing. I'm actually wearing Bombas socks as we speak, as I record this. My wife and I are in love with them. They fit just snug on your feet. They're the perfect thickness. They're soft. They're durable. You can't beat it. And then you get to feel good about the fact that, you just also help to clothe someone in need. There's not many companies out there that are willing to give away half of their product to people in need and not make a profit from it. That is really a noble and incredible thing to do. So get you some Bombas and help those in need as well. Go to bombas.com/creeper and get 20% off any purchase. That's bombas.com/creeper for 20% off. bombas.com/creeper. All right, so we had James Pugh and Brian Lorenz get convicted of murder for the killing of Deborah Meindl. But as we've talked about, questions still remained. There was a lot of people that were not satisfied, that they believed that it's possible that the husband, Donald,
Right.
was still involved somehow, and there would be a lot more fingers pointed at people that could have done this. And that's what leads us to 2015, 22 years after Deborah's murder. We get some other people implicated in this crime, potentially. One of them being a serial killer that's pretty well known, a guy named Richard Matt,
Right.
who, with another inmate, David Sweat, were planning what would become one of the most famous jailbreaks in history, escaping from a fortress with 30-foot high walls and spawning a massive manhunt. So let's go into this escape real quick from prison that Richard Matt and David Sweat pulled off. They escaped from the Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. First, the inmates. This is very Shawshank Redemption almost. Like it's,
Right.
This is a pretty insane. And when you see the pictures too, man, it's crazy. Like this steam pipe they cut through is like like a half inch of steel. I'm like,
Right.
you need a damn plasma cutter to cut that, and they
dude,
cut it so clean. I don't know how they did it.
And it was only because they were getting tools. They were getting tools from
Yeah.
that correctional officer.
Yeah.
Or the not the warden, but she was like right below the warden. But anyways, also those pipes that they crawled through, they were only 24 inches in diameter, dude. That's like just wider than your shoulders, bro. I couldn't do that.
Oh.
I couldn't do that, bro.
Reminds you of Ted Bundy when he went through that tiny little square that was holding the light in his cell, and he had to like
God.
lose like 20 pounds to get through it.
Oh my! Hey, I mean, desperate times come desperate measures. Especially if you
Yeah.
think you're gonna die in there, anyways. But
Right. You got women to kill in Florida. You got to get through that hole, man.
what's crazy is yeah, exactly. What's crazy is that this happened in 2015. This ain't in 1920. You know what
I
I'm
know,
saying?
right?
Like 2015, guys, Shawshank
7
Redemption
years
out
ago.
of prison and climbed through pipes to freedom.
Yep.
What?
Yeah. So let's talk about how they did it. First, the inmates cut neat rectangular holes in the steel at the backs of their cells. They fashioned dummies from sweatshirts and stuffed their beds to thwart
Classic.
discovery during their regular cell checks by guards. The inmates, both serving long sentences for murder, had adjoining cells 23 and 24 in cell block A, which sits 4 stories above the ground. The holes cut into the wall of their cells can be seen from the catwalk. The men climbed 5 stories down between the wall and the catwalk to one level underground.
Yeah.
The catwalk had not been regularly patrolled by guards for years.
Why would they? I mean,
right.
they didn't think the prisoners would freaking tunnel through concrete walls to get into it.
Right. Yeah, and they did their studying. I mean, they knew the patterns of the guards and all of that.
Oh yeah. Well, they had help. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. So once down one level underground, they cut a hole into a 24-inch steam pipe, which was half-inch thick steel. With the heat turned off, the pipe was cool enough for the men to crawl through. Imagine if the heat went on while you're in there and you just cooked.
Well, it was in June, so the chances of them cutting the heat on was slim to none.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But yeah, I doubt they would test this in in December or November.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. You would cook. Yeah. Oh my God, that'd be a horrible way to die, wouldn't it? Just in a steam pipe, just overheating, dehydrating. God.
Yeah, it'd be horrible. The pipe was cool enough. They crawled through this 24-inch pipe, and they made their escape in early June, and they even left a taunting note, including a racist caricature. It's like a one of those terrible stereotypical Asian thing.
Yeah, it looks like one of those like Asian hate type things. It's like a smiley face with angled, slanted eyes, buck teeth, and then it has like a rice farmer's
paddy hat.
Yeah. It's one of those.
And it says "Have a nice day" on it.
Yeah.
On the note, and it looks like they stuck it to the steam pipe.
Yeah, they sure did. Probably the inside of the steam pipe where they cut it in. You guys can check the sources, check the links under the description.
Yeah, to see the pictures.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend seeing the pictures from this jailbreak. It's pretty incredible how they cut that steam pipe so cleanly through half-inch thick steel. It's incredible. Like, it literally looks like they used a plasma cutter. No joke.
Yeah. They probably had a grinder.
Yeah. So they crawled through the steam pipe to a manhole about 400 feet beyond the prison walls, cutting through a steel lock and chain to open it. The men were carrying clothes and tools in a soft guitar case, according to investigators. The two had worked in the prison's tailor shop. The prison has the state's largest walls, standing at 30 feet. But, if you just go under them through a steam pipe, then you don't got to worry about them 30-foot walls.
Yeah, who cares how tall it is?
Yeah. 2 of the watchtowers, posts 1 and 2, which sit along Cook Street, were unguarded from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And the overnight hours during which they escaped. So once again, they knew the patterns. They knew which direction to head in to remain unseen until it was too late.
Yep.
And they would spend a few weeks on the run. And on June 26, 2015, after 20 days on the run and a day after his 49th birthday, Richard Matt fired at a camping trailer driving on the road in an unsuccessful attempt to kill the driver and steal the vehicle. The driver alerted police, and many U.S. Border Patrol officers were sent to investigate the heavily wooded area. After hearing coughing, they encountered Richard Matt carrying a 20-gauge shotgun. When he refused to drop the weapon, he was shot and killed by supervisory agent Chris Voss in Franklin County, New York, near the town of Malone, receiving 3 gunshot wounds to the head.
Yeah,
So
they weren't
triple
playing
tap
around.
to the head, and Richard Matt's life was over. Serial killer, guy he'd killed. I know he'd shot his boss at one point. He was like working for some sort of a crime organization.
Yeah, that's
Shot
the
his
one he
boss
got
and then-
convicted for, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he'd shot another person as well.
Okay, so he was for sure a convicted serial killer, not just suspected of other crimes.
Right. No, he'd for sure killed 2 people, and now he gets tied in with Deborah Meindl's murder.
Well, I mean, like we said at the beginning, this type of murder does fit with a serial killer.
Right.
You know, that does push a little bit of evidence his way.
Yep. Yeah, and David Sweat, the other man that escaped from prison, was caught 2 days later. He began to run, and an officer shot him twice, one in the right shoulder and one in his left arm. He survives, however. But let's back up to before the escape, that conversation that these 2 men had in the prison yard about their escape. Their conversation had turned quickly to how to get money once they got out, once they escaped from prison. Sweat would later recall that Richard Matt had an idea for how they would get money once they got out. He knew of a judge in the Niagara Falls area, some 350 miles from Dannemora, who kept gold bars in his safe. Now, how does this serial killer and career criminal know a judge and has been in his house and seen his safe with his gold bars? Yeah.
A little bit of collaboration going on.
Yep. He had some ties to law enforcement. When Richard Matt was, quote, robbing and collecting extortion money from drug dealers years earlier, a cop had supposedly taken him into the judge's house twice to drop off money. And Mr. Sweat remembered how his old friend was bragging to him. And he said that Richard Matt told him that him and a man named David Bentley, who you might remember Michael telling you to remember earlier, who was the lead investigator in Deborah Meindl's murder.
Yep.
Richard Matt and David Bentley, the detective, were close friends for a long time, practically father and son.
Wow.
But in Sweat's telling of the story, they had a problem. A woman had found out about what they were doing and was threatening to expose them. Now they were, taking these goods, extorting these goods, selling them to a judge, and all this corruption was going on. And somehow Deborah Meindl found out and was threatening to turn them in. So according to Richard Matt's story, they took action. Quote, the cops said she had to go, Sweat wrote, because she was going to rat them out. So
how would
we've
she
got 2 men
possibly
sitting
know
in prison.
about this? I mean, I know.
I don't know what her ties to.
Right?
How would she be tied to?
That's the only thing I
this
can't.
Richard Matt character.
Yeah, I can't figure out how she would know about this little operation they have going on.
It just came to me. You know how she would know. There's a lot of allegations that Deborah Meindl and Detective Bentley were in a relationship.
That's right.
So if she's in a relationship with Officer Bentley and she finds out that he's a corrupt cop who's working with a serial killer and criminal and selling stolen goods to a judge,
he probably confided in her and then was later treating her like shit or whatever. And then she was like, well, I'm going to expose you. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, no.
Yep. Mr. Sweat's accusation is that Detective Bentley, the lead detective on Deborah Meindl's murder, and Richard Matt were the ones responsible for Deborah Meindl's murder. And with this new information that emerges following, this prison break and this man being taken in, and he has this crazy story. Meanwhile, Richard Matt is no longer around for the police to question about Deborah Meindl's murder.
Right.
Unfortunately, he was killed. And so a team of New York City defense attorneys has accused the state of getting it wrong years ago when they convicted a pair of petty thieves, Lorenz and Pugh, and gave them life sentences for Deborah Meindl's murder. And as of today, James Pugh is a free man, having served his full sentence and being released several years ago.
Right.
Brian Lorenz, however, still sits behind bars. And there's just so many questions. There's so much that makes the husband, Donald, look like he could have been involved in this. And then you have Richard Matt, the serial killer that escaped from prison, that his partner in crime was saying that he, along with the lead detective Bentley in this, were partners in killing Deborah Meindl to keep her quiet.
Also, you don't think David Bentley knew of the escape and Richard Matt's escape, and there had to been that judge could have called. He could have called that judge or whatever, and been like, "Hey, Matt's on the run." They'd be like, "Well, if you find him, kill him." Right. It's just so funny that these expert marksman team that was sent out there, and a good enough shot to shoot him three times in the head. 3 times.
As if 2 wasn't enough.
3 times in the head. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a confirmation kill right there. And then
that's like a mob style hit, man. 3 times in the head.
Exactly. And then the other guy, Sweat, he gets shot in the shoulder and they take him in alive. Sweat really had nothing to do with this. I'm convinced.
Right.
I think him and Richard Matt just became friends in prison, and that's it.
They had adjoining cells. That was really all there was to it, and they planned an escape together.
Exactly. I think that's all Sweat has to do with
but
this.
Had Detective Bentley known that David Sweat knew what they had done, that Richard Matt had confided in him about that murder, they probably would have triple tapped him in the head too.
Oh, no doubt. If they would have found him on site with Richard Matt, he'd be dead. The fact that they split up saved Sweat's life.
Yeah.
I really
allegedly
believe that.
We think, in our opinions, because I mean, there's still so much unknown in this. But so this thing is still ongoing, as we said. In December of 2021, lawyers were in Buffalo in court to challenge the convictions of Lorenz and Pugh. Now, Pugh, as we mentioned, is already out. He's already served. I think if he had a 25-year sentence, he would have already been out for 4 years now.
Right.
Served his full sentence, but nonetheless, he wants his name cleared from this murder that, in his opinion and his stories, he had nothing to do with this.
Right.
And one of the lawyers that was on site in Buffalo to challenge these convictions was the former assistant district attorney, David Harady, who actually played a role in getting these men convicted. He is now saying there is reasonable doubt about whether the pair committed the crime. So the man that helped to get them put behind bars is now questioning it, and pretty crazy. You don't see that happen very often.
No, you don't.
A lawyer flip.
No, you do not.
So the original case is unspooled with each pull of a string, inconsistent witnesses, new DNA tests. So there's since been in the last couple of years, there's been DNA that had been stored from the crime scene. They had male DNA that had never been tested against the 2 men that were in prison somehow.
Right.
They finally tested it, and it doesn't match either. It doesn't match either Pugh or Lorenz. So, that being said, they also tested it against Richard Matt, and it doesn't match him either, the serial killer that supposedly played a role in Deborah Meindl.
Oh, we're narrowing it down. That doesn't mean
they have
there.
This male DNA, and it doesn't match any of them. Now,
my question,
have they tested? I was going to say, have they tested it against Bentley?
Test Bentley. God damn it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So the detective who led the original case complicates matters further. Detective Bentley, whose defense lawyers suggest he may have had a romantic relationship with Miss Meindl, long retired from the Tonawanda Police Department, he denied he knew Miss Meindl or had anything to do with her killing. Quote, "It's totally, absolutely, unequivocally insane," Mr. Bentley says.
Wow, that's so many adjectives now. I don't believe you. Right. Totally, absolutely, unequivocally. No, now I feel like you're just making shit up. That's just so much. Why do you have to confirm your innocence so much?
He does not deny knowing Richard Matt, though, the serial killer that escaped and was killed. Richard Matt's involvement and questions about his relationship with David Bentley were among the conclusions of an exhaustive investigation conducted by a pair of prosecutors. John F. Flynn, the county district attorney, however, has rejected their findings, which have not been fully released. He has also demoted one of the prosecutors and reassigned the other. So the current district attorney in this county, John Flynn, he doesn't want anything. He's not having it with these new allegations. He just wants this case to go away. The 2 men were convicted. One of them's already served his time, and he's not really into continuing this thing, unfortunately.
Of course, because if this is uncovered that Bentley had a big role in this, then the investigation doesn't stop there. You have to start looking into this police department and everything. Who's still involved?
Other judges.
This judge. Yeah. I mean, so
it opens definitely a can of worms for sure.
Yeah, it's not a bunch of enemies that you want to make, I would imagine, if you're Mr. Flynn right now.
Yeah. So the county district attorney, John Flynn, has denied that there is any credible evidence to link Richard Matt to the murder of Miss Meindl. He has defended Mr. Bentley as well. And though there was no DNA evidence connecting Mr. Lorenz or Mr. Pugh to the murder, the genetic testing that is at the heart of the men's appeal also did not find Richard Matt's DNA. investigators have discovered the DNA of another still unknown person, and over the years, they've not linked this to anyone. And also, since finding her mother when she was 10 years old, Jessica Meindl has had a rough life. She struggled with substance abuse. In 2005, she unexpectedly showed up at Wendy Correctional Facility in Alden, New York, to visit Mr. Pugh. So one of the two men that was convicted of killing her mother, she went to visit him in prison. And she visited him on 2 occasions, and she actually told him she was increasingly convinced that the state had mishandled the investigation of her mother's murder. Quote, "She told me in her own words that she didn't believe that I was involved," said Pugh, who is now paroled and living in the Buffalo area with his sister. He took notes of what Jessica told him at the time, and they contained multiple jarring allegations that her mother was having an affair with Detective Bentley, that he knew she would be home early on the day of the murder, and most shocking, that Jessica thought that the detective was involved in her mother's death. So the victim's daughter is coming forward after all this time and saying that, she now believes that Detective Bentley was involved.
Dude, he's the only missing link, right? If none of the other guys' DNA was there and they found DNA, and a messy scene like that, there was blood everywhere, blood all over the kitchen, blood on the dog toys, like blood on the dishes, and none of these guys that they tested were there. It's like there's only...
What a thing to think about, though, isn't it? To think that the day of the murder, if Bentley was involved directly or indirectly at all, he's there videotaping this crime scene that he may or may not, allegedly have...
It's perfect.
Fostered. He may have created this crime scene, killed this woman. Now he's there videotaping it. It's crazy to think about. That's like a movie scene,
Yeah, he has his fingers in every aspect of the investigation.
Yeah.
He could have literally controlled everything. And this guy was a veteran officer. He could have controlled everything from the very beginning of this murder.
Yep.
He could have planted the other DNA evidence, Lauren. That other evidence may still be tied to someone who is not even connected to the crime. It could have been evidence that he had from... it's all alleged. I'm just saying.
Yeah, of course.
It's just odd that...
We're saying things like could. He could have done this. It's possible.
Yeah. I just don't see how his DNA was never tested. Or, don't they have that on file as a police officer? Don't they have your DNA, fingerprints, and
you would
shit
think
on
that
file?
they would at least have the right to take it if they, had reasonable doubt.
Yeah, that should be part of becoming a police officer. You should have to surrender that stuff.
Yep. So, Deborah's husband, Donald Meindl, said that his daughter had asked him about 100 times whether he was involved. So Jessica, suspicious of her father, also of Detective Bentley.
Yeah.
He told investigators this year that he had heard from several people that his wife and Mr. Bentley had an affair, and maintained his innocence. So Donald Meindl still maintaining his innocence in this, pointing the finger also at Detective Bentley.
Yeah.
For his part, former Detective Bentley rejects the entire account, including any suggestion of a romantic relationship with Miss Meindl. Quote, "Are you asking me if I had anything to do with Debbie Meindl in a personal way?" Well, that's kind of weird that he's calling her Debbie, first of all. That's like a pet name, or like her name's Deborah.
Yeah.
It's more like a personal thing to call her. That almost to me is like a Freudian slip. Like,
Ooh.
Are you asking me if I had anything to do with Debbie?
Right.
Like, bro,
Old
her
Deb.
name on record is Deborah. Like, why would you call her Debbie? That's kind of weird. I'm just noticing that.
Oh, Deb. I didn't even know her.
I didn't even know Debs,
Yeah.
man. I don't know what you're talking about. Quote, "Are you asking me if I had anything to do with Debbie Meindl in a personal way?" Mr. Bentley said in a text to the New York Times. Quote, "If so, not a chance. No, never in my worst day." Also, like,
Again.
what a weird thing to say as well. Never, like, what are you saying? Like, never in my worst day would I be involved with that woman. Like,
Right.
It sounds so personal. Like, all the
It
things
does.
he's saying.
And it sounds like a lie because you just keep... Not a chance. No. Never in my worst day. You literally said no 3 times in that short sentence. Like, that's just so sus, man.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, Jessica Meindl, Deborah's daughter that found her, died in April 2020 at 37 years old. Far too young. It's unreported what the cause of death was, but nonetheless tragic. That event seemed to set her life in a down a dark path.
Yeah.
I'm sure she was deeply affected by it forever, and probably led to the substance abuse that
traumatized. She was the one that found her mom. If you remember correctly.
Yeah,
she's the first
and that's
one.
not just finding your mom dead. That's like you found your mom horrifically murdered.
Right. Yeah.
And people close to you may or may not have been involved. Like she's questioned her whole life whether her dad had something to do with it. Like, that is just a really fucking tough thing to deal with.
Yeah, right.
She was convinced that the men that got convicted for it were innocent. Like, that's just got to make the whole thing that much worse. It's not like you got a clean conviction of this guy did it and he's been in bars forever. This is like, she doesn't know. I'm sure she had serious trust issues. Like, I don't know who even killed my mom. Like, it could be someone really close to me.
Right. Imagine
Yeah,
how
it's fucked up.
helpless you feel as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you feel like there's this big looming dark secret that you just can't find.
It very well could have been two of the people that are supposed to protect her most, her father or the lead detective,
Yeah.
you know, that was trying to solve her mother's murder. You know,
Right.
like, so man, how do you trust anybody?
Exactly.
Yeah. James Pugh, meanwhile, said he had never met Jessica before her visits in 2005, and he was nervous because, quote, there was so much I wanted to say to her. I just wanted to be able to have forever to convince they got it wrong, to let her know that I'm not the person who did that to her mother. He said that when she stood to leave the prison after visiting him, he offered his hand, and she looked at it and hugged him instead. So we mentioned the DNA being finally tested. That was in 2018. A state judge finally ordered Erie County to test blood-spattered items from the crime scene, including the steak knife and the victim's clothing. Brian Lorenz was elated when the results came back that year showing that neither man's DNA had been found. Quote, I thought I was going home immediately. No, sir.
Nope.
Instead, Mr. Flynn, the district attorney, appointed two prosecutors to review the case, Michael J. Hillary, who ran the appeals bureau, and David A. Hirati, an assistant district attorney in the same division. They interviewed more than 50 witnesses and poked holes in the testimonies that had led to the convictions. Some jewelry and cash had been stolen from the house, according to the prosecution, but the only physical evidence linking Mr. Lorenz was a rare coin in his possession. And this is where you start to see the case that was against them falling apart many years later, where people are like, you know, I'm not so sure that coin that linked him to the crime actually was like our coin.
Right.
It could have just been some coin that Mr. Lorenz stole from somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
During the trial, this is an example, during the trial, Donald Meindl, Barbara's husband, told the jury that the coin that was found in Mr. Lorenz's possession was taken from his home, bolstering the theory that his wife's killing had resulted from a burglary gone bad.
Uh-huh.
But he later said that he actually wasn't sure whether the coin was taken from his house or not.
Of course not. He was just trying to get the heat off of himself.
Pressure off of him, probably. Yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, that's my coin. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Explain that, sir.
Right. And there's many issues of every coin. If, you know, there's very few coins that there's not at least, you know, 100,000 or several 100,000 or millions of issues of. So I don't know how rare this coin was, but
yeah.
One man, Carlos Gonzalez, testified at the trial that he had seen Brian Lorenz say that he couldn't believe he had killed someone. That was at the time following the murder, and that helped to get a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
Then Mr. Gonzalez, who was released from jail for cooperating with authorities, said he wasn't sure if what he said was true. So you're hearing once again another recanted statement that helped to get these guys convicted so many years ago, but now they're like, I'm not so sure.
Right, but it's also a statement that helped free the person who came up with it. Like Gonzalez, he had something to benefit. Once he testified, he was released from jail. Like, so it's like he's going to say whatever the hell he's got to say. This whole thing, which
all works in the prosecution's favor.
Everything
they look for people
is
who are
altered.
desperate to help them solidify their case.
Right. But in the initial case, everything's fucked with. Everything's altered.
Mm-hmm. And the biggest witness, for sure, the one that started this whole thing with Pugh and Lorenz, was Miss Hummingbird, the woman who came forward initially 3 days after the murder and had the story about how Lorenz was bragging about having killed Deborah Meindl. They would come to find out, had a drinking problem, according to her son, Gabriel Rodriguez, and was given when she was supposedly given alcohol by Detective Bentley during his interviews with her.
Oh, by Mr. Bentley, by Mr. David Bentley.
Yeah, yep.
No way.
Good cop, huh? Good clean cop.
Yeah, got his fingers in this too. What a shocker.
All right. Yeah. Gabriel Rodriguez described his mother, Mrs. Hummingbird, as a fabulist who spun tales from random facts. Quote, my mom was the biggest liar you've ever met in your life, he said.
Oh, wow.
So this is the woman
bold.
This is the main smoking gun in their case that got Pugh and Lorenz convicted was a woman's testimony whose own son says she's the biggest liar you've ever met in your life.
Wow. Isn't that terrifying? That someone
crazy.
who's the biggest liar you ever met in your life could put you in jail? That's terrifying to me.
And Nancy Hummingbird has since died. She died in 2019. So you can't get a recanted statement on her testimony, unfortunately, like the others. But
right.
Mr. Rodriguez, the son of Hummingbird, when he was 14, said that he and Mr. Lorenz went to have a shotgun sawed off at a local shop and visited 2 women at the mall. He said there was no indication that Mr. Lorenz had committed a murder just hours before, despite his mother's testimony in 1994 that he was, quote, hyped up. He said, quote, he was perfectly normal on that day. So you have, something to the contrary of her story.
Yeah, quite.
On the day of the murder.
Yeah.
David Bentley had a reputation as a tough cop, and we'd come to find out more about him and the fact that he was the subject of at least 15 brutality and harassment complaints over the course of his career. He also had a long-standing relationship, as we mentioned, with Richard Matt, whom he had known long before the jailbreak that would make him infamous. They met when Richard Matt was 13, when Richard Matt made an obscene gesture at Detective Bentley, who lectured the teenager. Quote, he said he had a soft spot for Richard Matt because of their similarly hard upbringings. Quote, I was an illegitimate child. My parents were alcoholics and abusive, Detective Bentley said, in a text adding, quote, I could relate to the lower class people who were often criminals due to my street smarts. Okay. He said that he began using Richard Matt as an informant, helping him get jobs and places to live. Quote, I felt bad for him. You could say almost that you could almost say I loved the kid. Doesn't this sound, this to me solidifies Richard Matt's story about him working with this cop, going to a judge's house. It's like Bentley's even admitting that he had him working with him. A criminal, and you're a detective, and you had them working as a informant or whatever. Like, that's not far off from them selling stolen goods and shit to judges. And
no, not at all. None of this seems like too much of a stretch, man. It seems like Matt he was grooming somebody to do his dirty work that he needed done behind the scenes because he was a cop and couldn't get his hands dirty. So he needed somebody with the gall, with the gumption rather, and someone who would listen to him, someone young enough that he could groom.
David Bentley insisted that Richard Matt, who would later become a convicted killer twice over, could not have killed Mrs. Meindl because, quote, he just wasn't a candidate for a crime like that.
Not good enough.
Murdered several other people, but like doing this, nah.
Wouldn't have murdered her. Yeah, okay.
The man who could have helped overturn the convictions of Lorenz and Pugh agrees. Mr. Flynn, the district attorney, resoundingly rejects any suggestion that Richard Matt was involved and said he would continue to oppose efforts to vacate their convictions. Like we said, he just wants to sweep this thing away and get rid of it. Mm-hmm. They already got convictions. It's over with. Let's not unturn all of this other shit and go down that rabbit hole of corruption within the police department, all of that.
Let's not worry about getting it right. We got it done instead.
Yep.
Yeah, we see this a lot.
David Sweat, who was the had the adjoining cell with Richard Matt and did that prison break with him. Yeah. And has since implicated Richard Matt in the murder. Says that he was convicted of killing a sheriff's deputy in 2002, and he says that after the district attorney Flynn removed the prosecutors, he sent other investigators to pressure him to recant what he had said. So now allegedly the district attorney is now sending people to threaten this man to take back what he said. Wow. And yeah, it's a wild one,
and it's still going on, right?
Yeah, it is. Local news articles from Buffalo in November of 2021 say, quote, a judge will consider if the case goes any further. If it does, the next scheduled court date is for December 13th, which, as you know, is already passed, but I was not able to find any information about a court date that occurred on December 13th, so it'd lead me to believe that nothing has happened in the last couple of weeks. But this is an ongoing thing. But it sounds like the current district attorney, as long as he's in place, this is not going to go any further until he's either replaced or something along those lines.
I feel like he's done with it, right? Because who is pushing for this case to be solved now? The daughter, Jessica, she's dead. Maybe the younger daughter, but she was probably so young she doesn't really remember it. And then the husband, he's never had any gumption to have this case solved. Almost every other person is dead. David Bentley is retired. He's doing whatever the fuck he's doing, I'm sure.
Yeah, he wants this thing to go away.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of fingers being pointed at him.
Absolutely. And, And then
you have David Sweat, who really has nothing to do with it. Aside from he, allegedly, was buddies and broke out of prison with a guy that's may have played a role in the murder. But
yeah,
like, he's really the only thing pushing this thing forward at this point, aside from people that just want justice, that are surrounding, like the former the former prosecutor.
That's right.
That convicted Pugh and
He's really the only
Hugh and Lorenz.
person. Yeah, he's really the only person that could be problems for this case.
Yep.
Sweat could be a problem for them in the future.
Or if a new DA gets elected, and then he wants to, one of the first things to take action. I could see that occurring. He or she, whoever the new district attorney is, whenever that occurs, you often see them tackle these high-profile cases, and you could maybe see the investigation picking back up into what really happened. Detective Bentley being looked at again if a new DA gets put in place. But as long as Flynn is in place, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere in that time.
Right, and how much longer does Bentley really have?
He wants it to go away. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd have to look into it.
I mean, he was an older guy, I'm guessing, when this happened, or probably like, mid-30s is back in 93. So he's probably, he's coming up in late 60s probably now, give or take. So, yeah. Well, I hope that Sweat don't catch up to him, old David Sweat, man, because he could bust this thing wide open.
Right.
Couldn't he? But don't let your Sweat bust your body over wide.
How perfect to have a guy named Sweat in the case. Oh my God.
That's right. Lucky for you guys, you don't have to worry about Sweat because you have Oh My Gaia, or at least the ability to have Oh My Gaia, which is an innovative all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients. Guys, there's tons of scents to choose from. Today, I'm wearing Barbershop. Wanted to switch it up a little. I like Barbershop. It's a very fresh. It gets me ready for the day. It's like it does remind you of like a fresh cut, But if that's
what I've been doing is grapefruit. Actually, I got a sample of grapefruit that I've been using. I'm gonna probably order just a whole jar of it because it's fantastic.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to hit Wendy up. I need a sample of that grapefruit. I got to try that. I love me some citrus smelling stuff. Guys, there's tons of other scents as well, from vanilla to cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk. That's another one of my favorites. Coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside, bergamot, amber, pear, sweet pea, sailor. And here at True Crime Guys, we have our very own scent called True Crime Pine. And because you guys are True Crime Guys listeners, you can get 15% off your order at ohmygaia.com by using the word creeper, CREEPER, for 15% off at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com. That's OHMYGAIA.com. Guys, go check it out. There's a link below the description. As always, you won't be disappointed.
No, you will not. And you do not disappoint us, those of you that have taken the time to go and rate and review the show this past week. We appreciate you, and you get a shout out. Thank you. Cameron in the U.S. says, love this podcast. You guys are awesome. Just signed up on Patreon for the Friday banter episodes and the Creep Van sticker. Thank you, Cameron. And then we got True Crime Ava in the United States says, another NC girl. Guess what? You got another North Carolina listener. You guys are so entertaining and lovely. Keep it up. Thank you, True Crime Ava. Keep an eye out for Michael in the streets.
That's right.
Then we got Farm Haint in the U.S. says, the banter. These guys aren't the best on research. Oh, thanks. Nothing like a compliment with a backhanded assault in there at the beginning.
Right at the beginning.
They salt their talk with plenty of F words, and my mother is often overhearing it. But man, these two get me through many hours of hard work as I listen while I do my farm chores. They are sympathetic to the victims, make fun of the loser criminals, and have a great rapport with each other. 5 stars for banter. Thank you.
We'll take it.
Shit, half the time we get people saying I don't like the banter, and then so you just got to be yourself and don't worry too much. There's plenty of people that we're their flavor. There's some that aren't.
That's right.
That's fine.
You just keep doing you, and the people that like you will find you.
That is correct. The vast majority of the feedback we get is positive, and we appreciate all of you.
Absolutely.
For that. The comments you leave, we see them. If you're listening on Spotify, I think we mentioned it last week, but if you could, they have a review or a rating option now that you can click right there on when you click on our podcast, you'll see it. Right now we're right around 50 already, even though they just added this feature. So yeah, if you could click 5 stars on that helps us get into different categories and the popular show list on Spotify, I'm thinking. So
absolutely,
that'd be cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and also hit that follow button as well on Spotify. Or subscribe on whatever podcast app you're on. And if there is ability to leave a rating or review, guys, please do. We appreciate that very much.
Even better than that, subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/truecrimeguys. $2 a month gets you access to our once a month premium episode that's only on Patreon. It's coming up. It's coming around soon again. I think it's the week after next. We'll be back on Patreon with an exclusive episode. The last one we did was The Jinx, Robert Durst. It was over 2 hours long. That's the kind of content we put on Patreon, like the big hitter episodes. There's many of the biggest name serial killers on there. You get access to all that for $2. And then if you want another show that we do, me and Michael shooting the shit on Fridays every week. We answer listener questions for upwards of an hour. Just the banter. That's on the $5 tier. And you also get a Gold Creep Band sticker at that $5 tier. And if you want to pay up front for Patreon, it's $21 for 12 months for the $2 tier, or $54 for a full year. And then you don't have to worry about a monthly bill. I know everybody's using that app. What is it called? True whatever.
Truebill. I think Truebill.
Truebill, yeah. And they're finding out all these things they're paying for every month. You don't even have to do that.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
$21 and you're done.
Yeah, and like I said, if you want just the banter, $54. So you get a 10% discount for paying the yearly subscription. You got your tax return coming up here in the next month or so. Hey, $54, you won't even miss that, and you'll get just the banter.
Right.
You get to hang out every Friday with me and Lauren, as well
I'm sure
as
if
every
you got
Wednesday.
if you got a good tax guy, you could probably find a way to write off our Patreon subscription as well.
There you go.
It's like work entertainment or something. Who knows?
Yeah, there we go. Good idea.
It's good for my mental health. It's like it's an expense for my health.
That's right.
I'm sure you got a good tax guy. They could figure it out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a way to write off everything nowadays.
Yeah.
But also, guys, be sure to check out our other shows on our network that are available on the free feeds. Strange and Unexplained, wherever you listen, and also Full House Fantasy Football Podcast. Guys, both of these shows are available on all podcast platforms, and be sure to subscribe, follow, leave a review, a rate, whatever. Even if you're not done with the True Crime Guys catalog, just go and hit follow on there. That way you'll be up to date on new releases on both of those shows.
That's right. All right. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this insane case, and have a great week. We will see you next week for another Freeloader episode.
Yep.
Keep creeping.
Keep creeping, guys.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.
You hush your mouth, boy.